So we just look at each other.
Sure.
Ignore
Okay.
the camera.
Just ignore the cameras.
I'm so glad to have you in the program. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, I used to meet each other in the church, to worship together, but now we are going to have a conversation.
Yes, wonderful.
And
Yes.
you will be the focus of the conversation.
Well, this is kind of a first for us, but thank you for having us again.
Thank
thank
you. As you may know, the name of the program is The Starting Point. So usually we ask with questions about early memories from life, especially as they are related to family and to faith and Jesus and prayer. Which one of you would like? Usually in Europe we say ladies first.
Yes. Well, I was not raised Adventist. I was raised in a church, in a Presbyterian church.
Presbyterian church, yes.
So my mom would take me there. We'd actually met with a neighbor that we had moved next to, and she told us about the church. So that's where we had attended when I was younger. So I would attend what we would call Sunday school, and
Sure.
I was active in the youth group, and we would go every Sunday to church.
It was a good place for you. It instilled in your faith.
Oh
and-
yes, definitely, definitely. But you know, as I grew, I went to college. I started in UGA, and then I went to Georgia State. But when I started going to college, I just wasn't attending church as much, so I wasn't really sure like where I was going or what kind of church I wanted to keep attending.
It was not meaning that you lost your faith.
No, not so much that. It was just not knowing where to go to church. But then I actually had met Andres. We met in orchestra.
Well, Richard there,
Yeah.
but not so fast.
So that's kind of how I was raised. We went to church, and we would pray and read the Bible, study the Bible. But it's just very different from being Adventist, for sure.
Yeah, but you were, as you said, familiar with the Bible,
Yes.
with the old hymns.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
think in the Presbyterian Church, the old
Oh,
hymns
yes.
are more central.
Definitely, and a lot of the more English hymns, like that
Yeah.
from England, or
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
definitely.
Unfortunately, I don't know what's the stance of the Presbyterian Church on instrumental music. Do they have instruments?
Yes. Now, in my church, we had someone who would play the organ and also piano, and we had a choir. And then once I learned how to play viola, I would play in the church.
In the church.
But you know, we would have more traditional music in the church I
Yes.
attended. Now, of course, there's more modern services, but we would have a choir and have an organ, more, you know, typically.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned already that you took viola lessons. Viola was the first instrument, or you
Yes.
began with a violin and
Oh
moved?
no! I learned on viola first. Yes.
Viola first.
And I actually had started when I was about 12. So
so you were,
yes.
yeah, it was a little too late to start the violin,
I
yeah?
was already grown up enough to play viola.
Even
Yes.
viola, maybe
Yes.
cello.
I know, I love cello too, but
Yeah,
my mom
yeah.
told me to pick something that I could carry easily, so
Yes,
I picked
yes.
viola.
Not a double bass.
No, oh no.
The, your family was a musical family? Other people in the family were playing instruments?
No, not really. Now, my grandmother did play piano, but we didn't. She lives in Connecticut, so we weren't always around her. But
Sure.
every time I was with her and she would play piano, I always loved it. So, but my parents didn't play, and my sister sings a little bit, but she doesn't play an instrument.
Your grandmother were playing like hymns or also classical music?
A little
and
bit of classical
Classic.
and sometimes some hymns.
hymns?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So she had a strong influence on you in this respect.
Yes, definitely. Mhm.
So when you started the viola, did you like it?
Oh, I loved it.
You loved
Yeah,
it.
I didn't have to be forced to play. I
No.
wanted to practice, and I really loved it.
You
Now,
were a
originally,
phenomenal child.
I wanted to try chorus, but in my school, you could only pick one. You could do orchestra, chorus, or band. So I chose orchestra. My mom said, you can always go back to chorus, but you can't go back into the orchestra. So I chose orchestra, and I was very glad I did. So as soon as I was in the class, I really loved it.
That's very,
Yes.
very interesting. Were you also thinking on making music a career for you?
I almost became a music major in school. I was still heading toward the medical field. I was doing pre-med, but I wanted to do music as well. So I was still in orchestra. It was a tough decision, but I still took some lessons in college, and I still participated in orchestra, so I could keep my skills up.
Good.
Yes,
Good.
yes,
And so we'll return to you from this point.
yes.
Andres, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, well, I grew up Adventist. My dad was Adventist because his dad was a Adventist. His dad, my grandfather was a pastor,
A pastor.
in Mexico.
What
So
part,
the
what part of
it's in the
Mexico?
southern part of Mexico, Veracruz. But my grandfather, he was a pastor in the northern part of Mexico. So he was, I guess, what you would call the circuit rider, where they give him many charges and he goes from church to church, and he probably only sees one church, once every 3 months or so.
I see.
That Adventist heritage just, has been there the whole time. And not to say that the spiritual journey has been easy or not exciting. It's just different.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of been a part of our family life since the beginning.
Are you part of a larger family? Do you have many siblings or a smaller family?
In my particular family, we are. I have two other siblings. Sorry, it's just 4 of us. So it's 3
Yeah,
siblings.
you have
3
three
siblings. Sorry,
siblings,
I have 3 siblings. I'm looking at my wife because she double checks my math. But I have 3 other siblings. And we all grew up kind of together, of course. But my dad, he was part of a huge family. There were 10 kids in his family, including him. So that was a very large Adventist family.
Lots of cousins. And
Yes, lots of cousins. In fact, I haven't really met them all. There's a lot of family out there that I don't know and I've never met.
how it is for you, Sarah, to hear that.
Yeah, I know. I
Quite-
have
quite-
one sister, and
Quite different. Yeah.
yes, definitely.
Yeah, it's very different, very different. Her family is very small in a way, compared to mine at least.
And
Our-
probably, at least in those times, I mean, it's not that far ago, but families tended to stick together in Mexico. yeah.
Yes, yes. So this large family. My mom's side, there were 6 kids in that family. So both sides of both of my parents had quite large families. So
Yeah. On your mother's side, so there are also many Adventists,
no, my
No.
mother's side was actually all Catholic, like
like the majority.
like the majority of Mexico.
Yeah,
You have a lot of people who call themselves Catholic, but they don't really go to church.
Yeah,
They just call themselves Catholic because everyone else is Catholic.
sure.
It was just very interesting that, on my dad's side, we had pioneers of Adventism in Mexico. So, and there's a lot of stories on that side that I've heard,
Give us one.
Well, there's one story that my dad tells where, he was out with my grandfather's, out in the northern part of Mexico. And they were singled out for being Adventist. And he remembers he was in the front yard of his house as a little kid, and a few kids came by on the road, and they called him out and said, "Hi, you're the Protestant." And I don't remember if he told us that they spit at him or they yelled at him. I don't remember.
That could be. Yeah.
But they did make a fact that he was different, that he wasn't part of the Catholic group, I guess, of the Catholic religion. So that, those are some of the things that I've heard through the years.
Yeah, probably they are quite mild.
Yes. I'm sure there's more.
Much more.
So-
Yeah. Even nowadays in parts of Mexico.
Yeah, absolutely. Although, I think it's called the Inter-American Division. In
Yes.
it's one of the fastest
Fastest
growing.
growing, yes.
It's just really, really taken over in Mexico. There's a lot of Adventists, and I'm just glad that my family was, a little bit integral to help
Yes.
with that growth.
So you grew up actually in Mexico, or you moved to the States while you were very young?
Yeah, I moved to the States when I was very young. I was only 5 when we moved to the
Oh,
States.
I see.
So it's been a little bit different, obviously moving to a different country. When you're a young child,
Yeah.
it's everything kind of seems about the same.
Mhm.
There were a few struggles, learning the language and everything.
In
But
what, in what part of the States?
we came here to Atlanta actually. So yeah, so Atlanta's been my home for the last 25,
I see.
actually for the last 30 years.
Mhm, mhm.
And it's a wonderful place to live, we've visited other parts of the country, of course, but Atlanta is home. So one of the things that my parents tried to do whenever we moved was to find an Adventist church. And we were able to find one in Forest Park. We found a Hispanic church.
Ah, so
And,
you began in a Hispanic church?
Yes, we went to a Hispanic church, and my parents actually still go to that church.
Really?
Yes. So even though it's changed its location, a few times, it's still the same church.
Interesting.
And there are some original members there, some charter members that still go there, and it was my church for a long time as well.
I suppose you started violin a little earlier than Sarah.
Yeah, I started violin when I was 9.
9.
So, but it's not that much
No,
earlier
not
than
that-
Sarah.
yeah.
Just a few years.
Mhm.
And I've played it ever since ninth grade. Elementary school in Fulton County. They said, "Hey, we're starting an orchestra. Who wants to join?"
Mhm.
And I wanted to do it. But also one of the reasons why I started playing was because of my parents. I guess they noticed that on Sabbath afternoons between the main service and the youth service, I didn't have anything to do. And my sister, who's older than me, she was very much involved in the puppet ministry. Our church had a puppet ministry, and she was
Interesting.
very much into that. So that took up her time. So they said, "Well, what are you going to do?" And I said, "I don't know. I don't really like the puppets." They said, "Okay, well, why don't you pick up an instrument?" And there was another lady, another kid in the church who played violin. And my parents said, "Well, you can play violin. We'll buy you a violin, or you go into the puppets. You pick one or the other." So I said, "Well, I'll try violin." So that's how we did it. And then pretty soon after that, when I went into school, they decided to start orchestra in elementary school, which is quite rare in the States.
Yes, you're
Most of the counties here in Georgia, they start band in 6th grade. And orchestra is not as common. A lot of schools do not have orchestra, especially away from the city. But I was lucky that Fulton County, in that elementary school I was going, they decided to start orchestra.
It's a public school.
Yeah, it was a public school, yeah, 4th grade. And, we became part of it, and we've played it ever since, pretty much.
So you were like Sarah. You loved it so much that you shouldn't be pushed to go and practice, or it was
I would say for the most part.
Really?
I really, there were times when I was really, really into it, and it was, I remember my father worked nights. He still does, and I remember he would come home, and I would have to practice, and I have to practice at home, and he had to sleep. Yeah. So, but yeah, for the most part, I've really loved it and everything. Now, there were some spells, maybe in the middle of high school where I said, I don't really care for it as much. So what I did is that instead of playing violin a lot, I decided to learn piano.
Oh.
So, and your
Still
wife
music.
plays piano, so you know that that on one hand you read the treble clef, and on the left hand you read the bass clef.
Yes.
So I knew the treble clef because violin plays treble clef. So I said, okay, I'm going to learn the bass clef. I need to learn how to read it. So I decided to do that, and I started teaching myself piano just by learning the bass clef and kind of, doing it. So now I kind of do both, but still my main focus is violin.
And Sarah can tell you how to play in the D,
Yes. It's alto
C,
clef.
the C or
Alto clef, yes.
This is how it is called here, alto
Yes.
clef.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yes. Even though I, as a violist, you have to learn how to
Lots.
play treble clef.
Oh.
And I do have to read bass clef. If I'm reading out of the hymnal and we're playing in our quartet, I have to learn bass clef. So
Yeah.
I kind of do a little bit of
That's
all of
actually
it.
the easiest part.
Yes.
Yeah, and in the meantime, Andres, you were also thinking on what are you going to do in terms of faith and religion. When did you come to a decision?
Growing up Adventist and going to church all the time, it's just kind of part of you,
Part of-
almost.
It's your culture.
Right. It's part of the family life, part of the culture, which is different from, somebody who's never had any
Yes.
church, who has a moment, and I think for a lot of us who have been part of the church, it becomes a little bit more difficult
Yes.
to have that moment
Yes.
because it's just there all
Yeah,
the
yeah,
time.
yeah.
And I was baptized when I was young. I don't remember. I think I was probably like 12 or 13 when I was baptized. But I remember clearly being baptized mostly because it just seemed like the thing to do. You get to a certain age, and your parents say you want to get baptized, and everybody's getting baptized, so you get baptized.
Yes.
But I didn't have that moment until way later. I think, maybe 5-6 years later, I was at a retreat, a youth retreat, almost at the end of high school. And, I really felt that calling that
Do you remember
that God
more
spoke to me.
the circumstances? It was a series of sermons which impressed
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
Or what do you think it triggered that sense?
I think it was just,
or it was the time. It was time about for that.
no, we were in a youth retreat up in South Carolina, in Orangeburg. The South Atlantic Conference, which is the church that I used to go. They were part of South Atlantic Conference, and they had a youth retreat over in their hall over there in Orangeburg, South Carolina. So we made a trip with a lot of the youth of the church, and it was a combination of the speaker and what he was saying about the Lord, and the worship experience there, where I really felt that calling, to that God spoke to me to be part of this church.
I see. So, Sarah, a short question for you. I don't know, but I suppose in the Presbyterian Church they have this thing called confirmation.
Yes, that's
So
correct.
yeah. So you had that. It was about
Yes, I did
12
do that.
12
I
years
was in middle school, so
Middle.
I was about 12 or 13,
Mhm.
and I went on like a little retreat, and we had attended classes.
So you had some
So
classes.
yes,
So it was
absolutely.
an experience to remember.
Yes, definitely.
Now, let's continue with you,
Yes.
and then we return to Andres. So you were continuing with your studies, and you were pondering, should I go for music or nursing?
Oh, respiratory therapy,
Uh,
yes.
yeah.
Well, I
And-
still was choosing between in which field to go to,
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
Yes.
So what was the decisive factor?
Well, all along, I really had wanted to do something in the medical field, and I actually didn't even know about respiratory therapy. So I was about 2 years into school, and that's kind of when you have to decide what way you're going.
Sure.
And I knew I wanted to serve in that way, to help people with their health and to make a big difference in that way. So I did a lot of research. I had looked into nursing, and I decided it wasn't quite for me, but I stumbled upon respiratory therapy, and the more I learned about it, the more I really liked it. And I knew as soon as I went into my program that I made the right decision.
Sarah, I'm not very aware of something exactly like that in Romanian. So maybe I'm wrong, but maybe it would be helpful to describe a little bit what is under this label,
Yes.
respiratory therapist. I mean, it's quite self-explanatory, but still.
Yeah, so the USA and Canada are a little different because in Europe they don't have respiratory therapists. They have nurses and then the doctors kind of doing everything. But in the US, the respiratory therapists, we do the ventilator, so the machine helping people breathe, we'll run that machine. We can place the airways, so the breathing tubes, we can put them in. We draw blood to kind of tell how well the machine is working. We give oxygen, so if someone has low oxygen, we can put them on something. And of course, we can work in all areas of the hospital. So we work in the emergency room, in the ICU, I work in the NICU as well. And then we work just in floor care, giving like breathing treatments. So if someone has asthma or COPD, we can give them some medicine to help.
So NICU is intensive care for newborns.
Yes, that's correct. So we can actually get any age, from newborn down to 22 weeks.
22 weeks.
So they can be really small.
Yeah. So you have all the training of a nurse, I suppose, but
yes.
You are also trained to work with a number of equipment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, quite complex, I suppose.
Yes. So really the training up until the program is the same as nursing. We do like chemistry and biology, and we took physics as well. So, anatomy, all those classes. But once you're in your program, we focus more on like the lungs and the heart, and then the nurses are doing everything else. So they'll do like kidneys and really focus on that, and giving medicine with IVs. So that's how it's a little different. We're on the same team, of course. We're supporting each other.
So have you any idea what made you choose that? Why was that more appealing to you compared to regular nursing?
So I think just working with the ventilator was more appealing to me. And being able to place the breathing tube is just so interesting to me. And the fact that I can go all over the hospital. I can work in the ER one day and then with the NICU the next day. So I like that.
So
some nurses can do that, but it's a lot more rare.
So you enjoy the fact that you are not so much, stuck to a place.
Yes, absolutely. I'm flexible. I can go all over. Yes.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yes.
So you also do your steps easier.
Yes, absolutely.
More than than the minimum required.
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
Good. You still play the viola?
Yes. So I'm still
on a regular basis?
Yes, we're still in DeKalb Symphony Orchestra. So we rehearse every Tuesday with them, and then we have concerts about 8 times a year. And then of course in church, we participate in the quartet, or I played a couple weeks ago on the online service too, so I'll still find ways to play in church as well. Yeah.
Well, let's speak about the symphony you play in. It's not a professional,
No, it's a little less than that. So it's available to people who might not be able to play music all the time. But there are still some professional people in there who that's their career.
But as a body,
it's a community orchestra.
It's a community orchestra.
That's kind of what we call them. And I've been there for quite a few years now, and she came a few years after she was done with studies in UGA, as she said, in Athens. So when she moved over to Georgia State, I talked to the conductor and I said, hey, I know somebody who plays viola, and they're always looking for violists. So
But
this-
so you knew her already?
yes, I already knew
Yes,
Sarah.
yes.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, we were almost getting married, so that's
Yeah.
that's not
Oh.
where we met.
I
Not the
thought that
orchestra
was,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought that was the place.
No.
No, no.
No.
No, it
Tell
was
us.
a different orchestra.
A different orchestra.
Yes.
So way back, goodness, it seems quite a few years ago.
It was.
When I was in college, I played in an orchestra, and that orchestra had a youth division. So I was in college, and Sarah was in the youth division, and that's the first time I met her. We were just a few years apart, but that was the first time we met her. I met Sarah, and later on, she moved up to the main orchestra where I played, because if you're a pretty good instrumentalist, they'll move some of the younger players to the main orchestra. So we played in that orchestra together, maybe a year?
I think it was 2 years.
Yeah, something like that. So we played together, and that's where we met. But we weren't anything or anything like that. So then she went to college at UGA, so we kind of lost that connection a little bit of playing together, but we were still friends. And we kind of kept that relationship going, and that's where we are now. But we met in that first orchestra. So years later, when she decided to move back to Atlanta from Athens, is when I told her, hey, why don't you come play in the orchestra? If you still want to play in an orchestra, you can maybe come play in the Cab Symphony where I am. So I spoke to the conductor, and she did a small audition, and now we play together. Of course, we haven't played this year.
Oh, yeah.
We haven't played since January.
Yeah.
January was our last concert, and we were supposed to have one last Tuesday. We were just thinking about that's one of our concerts.
So give us a little detail on this orchestra. Roughly how many players form it as a regular? Sometimes you need some extras, I can
Yeah, yeah.
imagine,
Yeah.
like brass or whatever. But roughly how many people are the basic people? How
Yeah.
many of them?
So we actually have about 40 to 50
40
people
to 50.
regularly. And of course, depending on the piece, they
Yeah,
might have to
yeah.
bring in some
Yeah.
extra people.
Yeah,
But yeah, we have a pretty good sized group. Of course, the viola section sometimes will be lacking, and the second violin. So in the middle, we're a little lacking sometimes. But there's always so many first violins,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
the section he
There's
is
always
in.
a lot of violins, and
Not
but
a lot of cellos either. So
yeah.
yeah.
But it fluctuates. It fluctuates a lot. Some years we've had probably in one concert maybe up to 75 people on stage, which is a pretty good size orchestra for a community orchestra. But on the regular, probably about 50 is what
And
we.
as far as the repertoire is concerned, can you give us some ideas what is usually in a program?
Yeah, so I think we played about eight concerts a year, and it's mostly classical. We have one pops concert during the year and one children's concert.
Oh,
So we played, major symphonic works, overtures, symphonies, and concertos. We have a concerto competition for high school kids, and that's proven to be very popular. We had some great players play with us over the years, younger kids who are doing very, very well in their chosen instrument. So it's a lot of fun to learn the major symphonic works.
and the auditorium you usually play. How large is it?
Well, the orchestra is in residence at Georgia Perimeter College over in Clarkston. I think it's now Georgia State University, Clarkston. So it's actually a very nice auditorium.
It's like 300 people
300
or so,
people
yeah.
so, yes.
Do you think you have a faithful group of
Yeah,
the audience?
absolutely,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Every time there's a concert, we get to see as players, we get to have a ticket. So we get to see how many seats are available, and people buy the subscription. So for us players, we always have to kind of get in there really fast,
Yeah, get
or
our
else
seat.
we won't get a seat. For the most part, a lot of the concerts are close to being sold out.
Wonderful.
So that's really
Yes.
nice, you know.
So what does this experience, as you said now, you miss that, but playing regularly in this community orchestra, what does it bring to you? Your answer is very significant because I don't know if you are aware of that. Today is the World Day of Music.
I wasn't
Yes.
aware of that,
I
yeah.
wasn't either.
World Music Day today.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Well, for me, since I don't do music as my career, it's my way to keep playing
Yes.
and to relax and to do something I really enjoy doing. And it really makes me happy. So it can be exhausting sometimes,
It
but
is, yeah.
I really love to play. So it's a big stress reliever for me too. So
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you?
Now, for me, it's a little different because I do music all the time. As a
Yes.
career, you know, I teach instruments and I teach choirs and all that. So I have music around me all the time.
Yes.
But being in an orchestra is just a different level. So I treat it as something apart from my teaching and all that, where I get the chance to not perfect somebody else, but perfect me.
That's interesting.
Yes.
So,
interesting, yeah.
so the challenge for me is to raise that bar for myself. How much better can you get yourself? And with the group, how much of a quality performance we can do. So a lot of times it's not stress-free. It's not something that I can go and say, oh, I'm here to de-stress. No, because I'm actually putting in maybe more effort and more concentration. So, but to me, that's where the enjoyment is. To be able to have this musical experience, musical performance. And there have been some really magical moments along the way. You know, for myself, maybe my stand partner didn't feel the same way, but maybe that evening's performance was really something where I said, yes, that was excellent. So I'm really happy to have those moments.
Do you have an experienced and a gifted conductor? He's really good in what he's doing.
We have a conductor that in the particular orchestra where we are at. He's been there for like 25 years. He's been there a while, and this was actually his last year. So unfortunately, we do not have a farewell concert because of you know, the current coronavirus situation. We haven't met, we haven't rehearsed, and there's no concert. So we all kind of just say goodbye through email, I guess.
Oh, that's quite sad.
Yes.
And you know, he's a good conductor. He's a good conductor,
Yes.
but we're excited as a whole, as an orchestra, to, and I speak for myself, and I know for others as well, that you know, we're excited to see who's going to come and conduct us next year. So.
Yeah. So also playing together was the opportunity for you to know each other better, and also to learn about each other religious faith groups. Yeah.
Yes.
Do you remember it was he trying to explain to you about his faith? It was you asking him, or
Well, yes, and as we,
or both?
as we grew closer, we would talk about it more, and then eventually when we started dating, he brought me to church, and I really got to see what Adventism was like.
Did you have any previous knowledge, or
No, actually,
hint?
no, not
the
at
word
all.
was even the word Adventist was not known to you?
No, not at all.
Interesting.
So, yeah, so just learning about it and then going to church was life-changing for me, really. Going to
Do
the
you
Adventist
remember?
church.
Do you remember the first impressions, the first reaction when you? Okay.
Well, of course, it's just so different that
In what
just
ways do you
learning.
think it's
Well,
so
just
different.
anything from praying to getting down on your knees to pray. We don't do that in the Presbyterian church. So just like learning that, and but a lot of things are similar too.
Of course, yeah.
So the hymns are very similar.
yeah,
So I knew a lot of those. And I was going to church in Spanish too. So he would translate for me, but I was learning a new language on top of that. So
But now you speak Spanish?
a little bit, yes.
bit,
I'm
yeah,
still
good,
working on it.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say that you know, the first church, the first Adventist church that I took her was actually the Hispanic church where I was going.
Yes.
So it was a very big change, I would say, from the Presbyterian church. And I've actually been to the church where she grew up. So mostly because of the language, where it was different, some of the hymns were different. But later on, when she was in Athens, studying in Athens, I went a couple of times and said, hey, let's go to church. So we went, I went up on a Saturday and I said, hey, let's go to an American church in Athens. So, and that change is not as drastic as going to an Adventist church in a completely different culture.
Culture,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
And we were actually able to play over there in that church. They asked us to play because we would go there pretty often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were able to actually play in that church. So that was very nice.
Was there a point where you're considering the differences in teachings and practices?
Yes, definitely.
And, what was your reaction? The first, about worshiping on Saturday rather than Sunday. Do you remember what was your reaction to that?
At first, it's just a change, but I really had no problem with it. It's the Sabbath is the important day, so just kind of knowing that was the day that I needed to keep holy was important.
Of course, it was not just Saturday versus Sunday, it was the way you keep it.
Absolutely,
'Cause
yes.
Here is the big difference, I
Yes,
think.
yeah, because typically I don't know in other countries, but in American churches that go on Sunday, it's just like almost like another day.
Yes.
You'll go to church and
But
then
then
you'll go
you-
and do whatever.
The beach or shopping. or-
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
So it was just remembering those differences, but realizing that they were very important. So it was easy to understand and to learn.
It was a slow acceptance, absorbing little by little. Did you come to a breaking point? Did you come to a struggle about one or another of the?
No, really,
You know,
not
no.
really. It's just, kind of learning everything. It did take a
Little by
while to
little,
learn,
little by
and
little.
of course, we're reading the same Bible, but just interpreting it a little bit differently and interpreting it the correct way. So,
Were you happy in the process, or it was?
oh yes, definitely. And I think it really helped me also because college is a stressful time.
Oh,
So to be able to go on Sabbath when I was still in school, to go and participate in his church, and he had the youth program in the evenings, it really helped me.
really?
Absolutely, yes. Because once I was in my program at school, it's quite stressful. So just remembering to keep that day for God, and it really helped me.
It was difficult for you to share that with your family?
No, it
No?
wasn't at all, no. And actually, my mom, we have talked to her about it, and she really enjoys coming to our church. And yes, so she's been a few times.
Wonderful.
Yes,
Good parents. I mean,
yes.
in most places, parents would be quite upset.
Yeah, oh, yeah, but not my parents. No.
I hope they will probably see the program. I
Yes.
hope I don't give them an idea.
Oh, no.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think adding to what Sarah has said, one of the blessings we have had is to find Atlanta North Church, where we currently attend.
Yes.
We found there a place that we felt useful, that the worship was something similar to what we've had, a traditional style. And we were able to participate, and it's just been a wonderful experience that we found that church. And we actually got married in that church 4 years ago. So I think that's really helped, that we found a church that that met what we wanted in a church, I guess. But I guess what the Lord wanted to, and where the Lord wanted us to be.
I see. Yeah.
Yes.
So 4 or 5 years down the road, you are still convinced and happy about the decision you made?
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
So we had
Wonderful.
actually been baptized together. So it was a little while before our wedding. And that's kind of how we had found Atlanta North Church. We had a friend who attended the church, and she invited us to come, and we'd been looking at places to get married, but when we came and heard the message and just saw the worship, it was definitely a turning point for us.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah.
So
So much that we moved I moved my membership, and then we both got baptized a few months before we got married.
yes,
Yeah. So it's been a very nice experience.
yes, definitely.
So,
Sarah, now you work as a respiratory therapist in the
Yes.
time of coronavirus.
Yes. So it's been definitely something that, as a respiratory therapist or someone in the healthcare field, you might not even imagine it was going to happen. Of course, you hear about pandemics and you think, oh, okay, we've seen things and then they go away, but this has just been totally different, and especially since it's really a respiratory illness that we're getting a lot of work handed to us. At first, it was very crazy to see. Just I'd come in, I didn't really know what to expect, and all of a sudden, it's just the ICU is full of everybody with coronavirus. And even they had to open up another floor of the hospital and turn it into the ICU. So we were overflowing with these patients, and just having to really, put on all that gear, and you're going in, and then you're like, okay, I'm done in here, and then the next patient, it's a lot of stuff to take on.
It's very stressful,
And
very,
yes, definitely.
very
And some people say,
demanding.
I'm sorry.
very demanding.
Oh, absolutely. So mentally very demanding. It is, of course, physical work too, but it's also mental work. It takes a big mental toll on you. And that's where I'm thankful that I have music, because I would play my music, and we were still playing virtual services, so that kind of helped me de-stress a little bit. But the numbers had gone down, and now they're starting to go back up again, so which we all had expected with everything reopening. But it was just something different that I've never seen in my career so far. So
Lots of questions working, but the mind asking lots of questions.
yes,
And most of the people getting better, but some
no, and it's more of like people were passing away, but also there are people who are so sick for maybe over a month, and they would finally get better, but they still had a long road ahead of them with recovery.
So they would go out of ICU, but still staying
Yes, they
in
would
the
be out of
hospital.
ICU, or they would head to what we call a long-term acute care, and they would go to another facility and have to really relearn how to walk and use their muscles again because they were in bed so long. And we do see that sometimes with some cases already, but with the COVID, it's just totally different. People are getting so sick so fast.
So fast, yeah.
And now we do know how to manage it a little bit better, so we had learned how to take care of these patients now. Of course, it's still very serious because there's no cure, so.
And probably it's not going to be for a while.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah. So it'll take a while, especially here in the US with like the FDA. They have to approve things, and they have to do studies and tests just to make sure they're not giving you something that's bad. And then you have to outweigh the risks and benefits and everything.
And immunization, but if the virus begins having mutations.
Correct,
So
yeah.
when we have the the vaccine ready,
Yeah. And
It's a different virus.
Right. So I don't know how
The
they're going
target
to
is-
do it with, like, if they'll group it into the flu shot, because the flu shot covers many strains of the flu, the swine flu. So I don't know how they will do that or how they'll decide to do that. And it can mutate, and it will.
Sarah, have you felt like being in danger personally? How did you mitigate with that?
Well, really, yes.
Yes,
There have been
absolutely.
times where they give us the mask. So we wear an N95 mask with the patients. But at first, it was very hard to get those masks. And when we were ruling out the patients for COVID, we might not have gotten the mask. So it was a little scary at first. It's like, well, is my mask even sealing right? And do I have enough protection on? And then even now, like, we had kind of relaxed a little bit, like, oh, okay, the numbers are coming down, and we still have people coming in, especially in the NICU side. The mothers will come in, and they'll test the mother when they come in. But we get a little relaxed and just wear a regular surgical mask, and then you think, was I really exposed to this? So now it's just a whole different feeling.
A regular
wanna wear
surgical
the
mask
mask with
doesn't protect
everybody.
you. Doesn't protect you very much. Yeah.
You have to wear an N95. So if you go in a room, you're wondering, does this person, are they really negative? Do they really have this? Am I wearing enough? So it's very different overall in healthcare. We're all feeling that way now. Some of the doctors will just wear their mask everywhere, and I will too most places, but in the NICU, it's okay. But we have to wear a regular surgical mask everywhere now.
Everywhere,
Yeah. So.
And do you think this crisis has also impacted your inner life, your relation with God, your prayer life, things like that, your sense of mission, working in a hospital?
Oh, definitely. You know, before all this happened, I was kind of thinking of going back to school and kind of advancing my career. And I still am, but I shifted to maybe I wanted to study public health and be able to help out in these situations. Not that we aren't able to help at the bedside, but I've been thinking of that way. And of course, I have to talk to God about it and pray. And I'm still not certain what I want to do, but
Any one of your work mates have been infected?
A couple people did. They were exposed because before we weren't as cautious. We weren't wearing a mask everywhere. So some of my coworkers got the virus from actually other coworkers because we were out in the hallway, not wearing any mask at all. So a couple of people were out for 2 weeks. Thankfully, they were okay. Like, not everybody gets so severely sick, but it's, you know, we're definitely way more cautious now than we were before with everybody.
If the crisis will continue for, say, as it is now, for 1 year, what would give you resilience and strength to resist? Because, it's way beyond the regular expectations. I mean, we know we go to work and we get tired, but then we have a good sleep and we are back.
Yes.
But this is different.
Well, really, one of the only things getting me through this was God. I would have to stop and pray just at work. You know, it would just get too much sometimes. But there would be church groups who would come to the outside of the hospital, and they would come sing and have like a little service. And those were the moments where I knew God is here.
Very interesting.
Absolutely.
Do you have chaplains in your hospital?
They do, but these services had to take place outside because of the restrictions and the extra precautions. So different church groups would come and have maybe just sing a hymn or sing a couple songs and then have a little prayer.
But you don't have a chaplain to take care of staff? Or they
no.
are supposed to probably, but taking care of patients is already too much.
Yeah, so unfortunately with at least my job, I can't really leave or do too many things, but I can still take a moment to say a prayer or, just go take a little break for a few minutes and talk to God. And it makes a big difference. It gets me through the day.
What about the patients? Do you see them, having a stronger sense or a keener sense of their dependence on God? And
Yes.
Yeah, you do.
Definitely. I know me and several coworkers, we've prayed with our patients.
Prayed with your parents. So
Absolutely.
you are a chaplain.
Yes. So they've asked, or we just knew. Sometimes I look at people and know that they need to pray, or they just need a moment with God. So we'll stop. We do luckily have enough time to at least take that and really take a moment to talk to God with our patients.
Thank you for sharing that
Yes.
part of your work experience and faith experience at the same time. Well, Andres, for the last maybe 2 or 3 minutes, you are now teaching in the church school, yeah?
Yes. So a couple years ago, the former principal approached me at the school. I was just a member at the church, and they had seen me play, a few times play the violin, and they asked me, hey, you want to teach some violin lessons or some music lessons? And I said, sure. I had a job on the south side, and I had a couple days where I could come up to Atlanta North School and teach. So I started that way, and I had a good number of students, and then eventually the principal moved on to another place, and they were looking for somebody to help with the handbell choir.
Yeah, because the
And-
previous
Yeah,
director
because-
was also conducting the...
Absolutely. And
the-
also with the, with the singing choir, the regular choir. So they approached me, and I started with the handbells, and one day the other kids were gonna sing, and they didn't have anybody to conduct them,
Yeah.
and I said, okay, well, I'll help you this one time. And it was very successful, so they said, hey, you want to just continue doing it. So that's kind of what I do now at Atlanta North School. I direct both of the handbell choir and the other choir, and of course I still have my private students there.
The students, do you teach them in the afternoon, or I'm not speaking about the current situation, but usually?
Yeah, I would teach them throughout the school day, actually. I get to pull them from class for
It's
30
possible
minutes.
to pull them from the classes in the morning.
Yes, it's
I see.
during the morning. And I had some that were after school
I
as
see.
well. But the majority of them were during class,
I see.
during the school day. So, but it's been very different since since this
absolutely.
year.
Absolutely.
I remember that all of Atlanta North School went on a spring break in March. March 12th was one of the last days, and we never went back.
Yeah.
I went. Sarah and I were on a trip to the Southwest, to Arizona, and we were all thinking about coming back, and everything will be the same. But before I left, I spoke with the principal, and I said, this virus is kind of spreading. I said, just in case we don't come back, let me give you a plan, a music plan that we could use, or something. So I turned that in before I left, and when I came back from our trip, everything was different. Everything was very different. A lot less, obviously we couldn't be in school performing groups up till now. We don't know if they're going to return. Church choirs are not singing. So it's a very different environment. So one of the things that I realized, because I had a lot less work, is that I had to make life easier for my wife, because she had a lot of work.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of very difficult work.
Yes.
So whenever she would come, it was always, here's a new set of clothes, because leave your clothes outside
Sure.
and everything. What can I help you with? And stuff like that. Because she had a lot more difficult time than I did. Now, I continue teaching some classes through the
Oh,
internet,
Yes, yes.
and I kept some students that way, of course. Even through the school, we worked out something so that I was helping them teach music, even though I wasn't doing the bells or the choir.
Yeah, yeah.
And we were able to finish the school year. But overall, I had a lot more free time than my wife, who had to be at the hospital for long
Yeah,
periods.
so it was a good.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So, it's just been different, and we'll see what the future brings. We'll see what the new school year brings. There's a lot of guidelines that are being put forth
Yeah.
about performing groups, as a musician, that's kind of your life. It's performing. You don't learn music so that you can go and play in a closet.
Yes, yes.
The whole point is to perform and perform with other people.
To connect with the
Right, to
audience.
connect. So in a way, we're similar to the hospitality industry where, the airlines that bring people together and stuff like that. Music brings people
Yes,
together.
yes.
So that's something that's has had a very difficult time
Yeah.
adjusting to this coronavirus
So
situation.
it seems to be that we are at a new starting point.
Absolutely,
new starting
absolutely.
point.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, friends. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
coming and sharing your life journeys, your dreams, also your expectations and your prayers. Thank you. May God continue to bless you as a family, as you strive to serve others in their needs, health needs, educational needs, and the need we all have to know better the Lord.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Had a great time. Thank you.
Thank you.